Yeah, I think that point you just made about adoption versus benefit realization, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Just in terms of you know, I tend to see this quite a lot where people are maybe using slightly more legacy systems, or they've got overarching systems they've had in place for a long period of time, and the benefit's just not there, where you've got massive forms just requiring huge amounts of information, taking up loads of time. Just the adoption fall off. It's a complete false economy where I guess if everyone was just stuck in a room saying we need to collect all, if we collect all of this information and go to the nth degree, wow, we're going to have these incredible insights. And it's like, well, you know what, people have got to do a job and they've actually got to think about the user. And that it brings me back to the point we were talking about earlier with regards to bridging IT and procurement. What's the kind of typical gap that you see, or what's some kind of typical scenarios that you encounter when you're addressing that when you come in fresh to a new organization?
I'd say that when you ask me that question, it's not necessarily like the biggest gap or but the biggest challenge is often integration, right? Like people will be specialized in IT in a given system or a given technology. And as when you come in with procurement with this roadmap that I'm speaking of, right? And you've selected maybe 1, 2, 3 technologies that are going to be your base for covering those 7 blocks I was referring to earlier. Then the complexity is in making sure you have the right integration and the right people that understand how to manage integration, how to develop and deploy integration between systems, because that's often where we'll see things fall off in terms of adoption and complexity, because the integration scenarios haven't been thought out correctly, right? Because the way I think about it is you have a business process, right? There's 10 steps to get from trigger to the end result that you're looking for. And then you're going to have maybe, have to go through 3 systems to be able to get to that end result that you're looking for. And so you have to thread the needle of that process through those different systems. And that requires not only system interfaces, but also like potentially process interfaces. And what I mean by that is making sure that the definitions are the same throughout, right? So if I start off a requisition in a plant, which is an organizational structure concept in one system, and then I'm sending it to another system where the concept of plant doesn't exist, it's a division. And then I come back into an invoicing system and it's called an organization, then people are going to get confused when they talk to each other across the organization if they're working in those different systems, right? So thinking about how you're going to solve that it goes back to flexibility of the systems that you're purchasing as well. Like can we relabel things? Can we think about the technical integration piece as well? But I find that that's the biggest challenge at the end of the day when you're trying to cater to the entire value chain of procurement with systems, is being able to not only have that roadmap, have that deployment strategy, but then at a granular level, how does that process and the terminology and vocabulary, how is it integrated from end to end to make sure that
totally agree. We see that a lot with things like taxonomies. Taxonomies is a huge one, but even just the kind of like you say, structured cost coding and how that's applied and what terminology is used within that. But also if the company's made acquisitions or if they've got multiple different types of operation, the layers and layers of complexity are almost infinite in the sense of some of these really, really large organizations. They are incredibly complicated. And they've grown through acquisition and ended up with this giant beast.
And hopefully, I mean, in that scenario, you'll have a center of expertise, a center of excellence that's in your procurement team that's also kind of technology focused, and they're waking up and going to bed every single day thinking about how do we remove that complexity, right? How do we, in an M&A scenario, is there a way for us to onboard those folks into an existing system, or to think about how we're going to integrate them into the culture essentially of the company and what that means at a system level.